someone would say, okay, well, you need to extinguish that behavior. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, well, he's 4.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
There have been some things that he's done along the way. Already at age 4, I'd already seen things come and go. And I thought, you know what? I'm not going to worry about that.
Mhm.
That's going to go away on its own. And it may actually serve a purpose that I don't understand. And just because we grown-ups don't understand it
Mhm.
does not mean it doesn't have a purpose.
Welcome to Mother's Guide through Autism Podcast. I'm Brigitte Shipman. I'm your host, and I'm going to talk about what it would mean to be both responsible and responsive as an autism parent. What does it mean? So, in today's episode, I'm joined by Peggy Henkel Wolf, an award-winning journalist, autism mom, and author of See Sam Run and Responsible and Responsive Parenting in Autism. When Peggy's son was diagnosed, she did what so many of us do, and she searched for answers. That's what we all do, right? And tried to find the right path for ways to help. But over time, she discovered something even more powerful: how to parent with presence, trust, and deep respect for her child's autonomy. Stick around for a heartfelt conversation filled with hard-earned wisdom, honest reflection, and encouragement for every step of your parenting journey. Welcome, Peggy.
Wow, you touched my heart with that already.
Yes,
Thank you. Thank you.
beautiful, beautiful work that you've done. And as a fellow autism mom, I can't wait to learn all about your work because I just did an autism mom retreat. And it really is a parenting journey that feels lonely. And we have more questions than answers. And we all are on the same journey, but we have so many similar questions, but yet so many different things that we're looking for answers. But I think the main one is, how can we parent where our child is happy and feels like they have a contribution to our world?
That is the main question. It is. I think sometimes we feel the world watching us and we feel judged, but the questions that come from those feelings, I think, are the most honest questions because they get you to the core of what you need to do to love your kid the way they deserve to be loved.
Yeah, I agree. I would love it if you would just take a moment and share about who you are, what you do, and about your son, Sam, your journey.
Well, I'm a semi-retired journalist. We lived in Texas for many years. We just in the last year, at my son's request, moved back to California. So we're living here in the Central Valley and finding a new way through that he's leading, not so much me. And I suppose I should go back to, so everybody knows he's in his late 30s. He's independent. He holds a full-time job. He drives himself to work and to home. He's at work right now, manages his money. We're roommates. I sometimes I think as I'm aging that I'm getting the better end of the deal here. So, but we did, as I mentioned, he asked to move back to California. He was born north of here in Sacramento. We didn't know what was going on when he was little, but we knew there was something. And I hadn't even heard the word autism when he was diagnosed. So that was the early 90s. So we were living here in the late 80s and early 90s. And then after he got diagnosed, we happened to be living in upstate New York at the time. So we got to see some inclusive models of education. And we came back to California for a year and knew that that was the way that we needed to go. We needed to support him as he just grew up with all the other kids that were growing up. It wasn't easy, but having that as the primary driver, the primary goal, I think helped keep us focused on the right things. So when every once in a while, when a therapist might say something that Well, I'd go and think deeply about it, but when they would say something that I would go, okay, well, that doesn't really fit. Why
Mhm.
doesn't it fit? So someone would say, okay, well, you need to extinguish that behavior. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, well, he's 4.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
There have been some things that he's done along the way. Already at age 4, I'd already seen things come and go, and I thought, you know what? I'm not going to worry about that.
Mhm.
That's going to go away on its own, and it may actually serve a purpose that I don't understand. And just because we grown-ups don't understand it
Mhm.
does not mean it doesn't have a purpose.
Right,
So
right.
those kinds of thoughts, I don't know where some of that stuff came from. I think it's because my dad was a research biologist that I learned to sort of like keep peeling back to the bottom. I think those kinds of things helped when he was younger. We
Mhm.
didn't have a structured behavioral program for him. That was not an option when he
Yeah.
was little.
Same for Joseph.
Yeah.
But same timing. Joseph is a little bit younger, but I understand where you're coming from with what was available out there. Not almost no one could relate to autism other than Rain Man at that time for
Yeah.
us. Right? And so it was just like, well, we did our best with very little resources. And so, but how wise of you to be able to understand that, yes, this is a behavior that's helping my son figure things out, is what I heard from you. And I mean, how great is that to just use your mother intuition and to that for that to guide you?
I won't say I always did that. There were plenty of times I messed up. So,
Well, we all do. We all do.
yeah,
But
yeah,
still, the overarching feeling of that, hey, wait a second, that behavior may have a purpose.
yes.
Yeah, I love that. So I want to know a little bit more about his diagnosis. When was Sam diagnosed?
He was 4.5-ish.
Mhm.
We were living in Sacramento, and I wanted to start my graduate education. So my husband was a symphony musician. He took a year sabbatical. We went back to upstate New York. Sam was 4, and his little brother was a year and a half. I don't know where I had the energy for all of this. I really have the energy to get through a day now as it is. But anyway, so I wanted to get started on my graduate education. And so we were in upstate New York, and Sam is in a preschool that's parent cooperative. It's in a church basement. It's led by this lady that's just got this thing for kids. It's beautiful. And she takes me aside after a couple of weeks and says, have you considered that your son might have autism? And I almost would have freaked out right there, except that the end of the spring before, that word had been mentioned to me in a casual conversation once before. And so it's like, okay, this is a new word. I need
Mhm.
to know what this is. So I started reading a little bit. I
Mhm.
The other example besides Rain Man that we had back then, I don't know if you remember, is that television show Saint Elsewhere.
Oh, uh-huh.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
and I saw how the little boy on St. Elsewhere behaved, and I thought, "That's not my son." And
right.
also, Rain Man was like, "That's not my son." But his preschool teacher, Patty, was brilliant, and she started to connect me to resources, and it took a while. So she's telling me this in the fall, and it's next spring before they had time for us over at the University of Syracuse. A developmental pediatrician had a clinic. You came, they did their thing in the morning, and then everybody went to lunch. And then in the after lunch, then they sort of told you what they knew and then sent you a report. And they also, this was where we were introduced to the inclusive preschool model and all
Mhm.
the different kinds of resources. They knew they were sending us back to California. They knew we weren't going to be part of it, but they still introduced me to a social worker and a nurse and all the kind of people that you knew were going to be your village.
Yeah.
So yeah, but that was a shocking day. Even though people had been like tapping me on the shoulder, to have a doctor tell you, it's kind of, I couldn't feel the floor beneath my feet there for a while.
Yeah, everything just went slow motion for me. I had ringing in my ears. The level of pain was just unbelievable. Yeah, it's that comparison thing game then, like
Yeah.
my son is a genius. There's no way that he's autistic. What do you don't know my son. You don't know.
Right.
That level of comparison to find some way of proving that it's not so. It's just the emotional roller coaster, right?
It is. Strap in. Oh, yeah.
It's tough. It's tough. So I can absolutely feel that. I connect with that. And I think all moms, all parents connect with that. Some parents feel relief, and I think that's wonderful. I didn't feel relief. I was like you. I was just like, what just happened to me?
Right.
What's going to happen to us?
That one was terrifying.
Mhm.
That
Yeah.
thought, oh, wait a minute.
Yeah.
I wasn't really good at this parenting thing to begin with. And now I'm just going to fail utterly and completely and totally. This is, yeah, what's next? I knew grad school wasn't in the car. That was the end of that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, your world just
Yeah.
stops
Yeah.
for a little while till you find your new normal. And again, whatever that looks like on whatever day. But getting over the shock. I talk to moms all the time about going through the grieving process after a diagnosis like that. And it
It
is
is.
absolute grief.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think just I haven't I should know more about this and have thought about some of this stuff more deeply because I lost my husband in a traffic wreck. So I know grief. That's an incredible emotional journey and it doesn't always make sense.
No.
But so when you're grieving for your child who's still sitting there in front of you and perfectly fine there it's a dichotomy that you start learning, okay, I'm going to have to live with thing ideas for the rest of my life. It's like there's this and this.
Yeah. First of all, I'm sorry to hear about your husband because I know that that is deep grief that on your journey as well, and also for your son Sam. So, my heart really goes out to you. The boys lost their dad as well, and
They
so
do.
Joseph's processing and my son Jacob and mine, it's all just it's what's already hard is just like, okay. But at the end of it, I always do feel gratitude somehow because it's made us, all three of us, so resilient and closer in so many ways. My Joseph lives 2.5 hours away from home, doing well, much like Sam is, independent, has a girlfriend, thriving. But, he still needs help, and that's okay. And Joseph would tell you that. But resilience, you're going to be okay with not being okay.
Yeah, that's it right there. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I understand that level of grief as well. And I'm so curious. I'd love to hear about your book, See Sam Run. I know that it has touched like so many parents. I want to know what inspired you to write it and what did you learn about yourself during that process?
Oh, wow, you're asking me to go back almost 20 years at this point.
Take a second. Whatever comes up for you.
No, that's okay. That's okay. There were times when I think it's this meaning making exercise that I tend to do as a writer. So you think about stories that you tell. Why are you telling them? And then a lot of times for me, I know it might be plenty different for other people, but for me, I don't always know what I think until I write. And
Yeah.
then I write and I go, okay, well, that was stupid. But then you work through it and the process of storytelling, you make new sense and new meaning. So there were stories that we were already telling. I mean, they were rapidly becoming family legends. They got different treatment in the book. The one where Sam walked himself to the grocery store at age 4.5. That is in the epic section, family legends. But it's just kind of like this passing thing at the end of the book. Um, it, I mean, it's kind of interesting how when you put a narrative arc together for a story, different things have different weight, but they don't have different meaning. They have the same meaning. That's how it got started. I don't remember how it evolved into a book, except that I took what I had done to a workshop and I thought, okay, well, I'm going to trot this out in front of people who aren't autistic parents and see what happens. And the next thing I know, I won the manuscript prize. And it was like, oh my gosh, now I have to produce a book. And I did actually try to wiggle out of it. I've not confessed this before.
Well, why not 20?
But it's like I was working on it and it wasn't going well. And then it was the next year for that particular series of workshops and manuscript prizes. And that guy had done a Holocaust second. So it was a true telling of a couple that was living in Dallas. They told their tale, they told their stories and their meanings through him. That book was coming out and I am the first one and I'm not coming out, and I think they realized I really needed some help, and it was like, yeah, I want out, please, I want out. And they sent me an angel and George Getcha, and he helped me get it across the finish line. So, and I do remember at one point George was wanting to cut the story. There's a bit in there about hanging laundry on the line, and he didn't understand it and he wanted to cut it. But I did explain to him the purpose of that story was that I might not know what's going on with my kid. I might not be able to address any of what is going to happen in the next couple of years, but I can keep him clean and dry. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to keep him clean and dry. And then George went, oh, that's got to go back in the book.
I love that. Yeah. Yeah. So much of any parent's journey on here is, yeah, it's misunderstood. But look how much you can teach through your work of
Right.
simply telling your story.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And I think why we've got to tell these stories. We've got to tell the story from the other perspective so that more understand that there are more viewpoints, even in the classic stories. We can repackage them, rethink them, reframe them, and it's an even better story.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, so for our listeners, we had a little bit of a conversation before I hit record. And if you're listening, you don't see it, but if you follow me on Mother's Guide on YouTube, you can see all the Wizard of Oz and Wicked things that have been my inspiration. So that was a comment for that because you're absolutely right. Our conversation was trying to look through different lenses and trying to gain each other's perspective. And I think that's what we do as parents for our kids as we advocate for them is look, we look through that Joseph looks through a different lens. It doesn't make it wrong. It's just different. And so
Right.
just gaining both sides or all sides and being open to that. So I love that you brought that back in.
I knew I was going to, I just didn't know when.
I love it.
I couldn't not. It just
Yeah.
it hit my heart right away to see you surrounded that way. I just thought, oh, this lady is living it. So
I try. I try. So you've co-written Responsible and Responsive Parenting and Autism. So what makes this book different from other parenting guides out there, and what do you hope that parents take away from it?
that is a fabulous question that I want to answer two ways. One is that it's not any different at all. And then the other way is that it's completely different.
Okay, tell
But
us.
yeah, but Shala and I worked on this book for 10 years because we wanted to make sure that parents could walk away with the real tools that they needed. I mean, sometimes you get lost in the weeds or the forest or whatever, the high grass, whatever it is that's surrounded you and taken away your really big perspective. Because I think a lot of times if you can get your head above the moment and have yourself oriented to the right long-term path. And only you can know what that is. I mean, that it's different for everyone. But life is hard enough. You don't want to get too distracted and too off track if you can. So it was like, okay, so what are the most important things that need to be reinforced for parents? And they are learning, connecting, and loving.
Yeah.
And sometimes we get tools that, and actually, I have to credit my co-author for this brilliance, because I've seen her do presentations where the first thing she throws up on the screen is an ampersand, the little sign for the and sign. And then she'll put up all these things that you think are opposites. And responsible and responsive, I mean, I wouldn't put them in an opposites book. It's not like, light and dark or night and day or anything like that. But sometimes you do feel like in order to do the responsible thing, you've got to be going this way. And to do the responsive thing, you've got to be going that way. And actually, what you need to do is pull them all together and hold those things that don't seem like they fit. And then all of a sudden, the lights go on and you go forward in a way that is both responsible and responsive. Man, those are powerful moments. But I loved the way Shallow would put those sorts of things together because it made sense to me. When Sam was in late elementary school and early middle school, we used to write, they called them social stories for him.
Oh, very familiar. One of my
Yes.
favorite tools.
Yes, because what we discovered was if you just laid out all the little pieces, the final thing, he knew exactly what to do. He was just missing all the cues along the way. One of my favorite books was, the cover was hugs, first page, put your arms around someone, second page, squeeze gently. And yeah, he was not a hugger back then, and he's still not really a hugger. But when he does, you get your arms around, he gets his arms around you and he squeezes so gently. It feels fantastic. So I guess that's not tying quite into the putting dichotomies together to find other things. But once you start doing that, once you get in the habit of doing that, you're going to realize there's an incredible power in putting things that don't seem to fit, putting them together and going somewhere new. I guess it's kind of like decorating your house in orange and blue or red and green or complement.
The thought that comes up for me is when Joseph was diagnosed with PDD, not otherwise specified, right? Pervasive developmental disorder, not otherwise specified. I'm like, well, what in the world does that mean? Very similar to, I think what you're saying is that, well, it's pervasive. So it doesn't make sense the way Joseph receives the world. It's pervasive. So he's going to excel and know everything here, but not know how to do something that appears to be simple. His learning was pervasive, the way his brain took things in, and then the input, but the output was really like you didn't know what you were going to get. And so I feel like our journeys are very much like that. You kind of go, well, oh, we're going this way. My son's a genius. Oh, wait a second. No, we're struggling in school. Help. So I get it. It's almost like an oxymoron. Nothing makes sense. It just doesn't. But if you can just step away from it, like what you were saying, and just go, now, wait a second. If I take this side of it and this side of it and try to bring them together where they can complement each other, where his strengths can help him with his deficits, then we've got something really cooking.
Oh, that's the magic soup right there. Shallow likes to talk about how there's a natural progression in speech, how children pick up their vowel sounds and pick up their consonant sounds and combine things and make their leaps into sentences and complete thoughts and that sort of thing. But if you get a kid like ours who is like completely infatuated with rockets, okay, they're going to get the R sound right away. I mean, you can just start doing the list of all the things that will shoot ahead because they're motivated. Yeah. And we took advantage of that countless times. I don't think Sam would mind if I mentioned that when he was younger, he was a very, very picky eater. Holy cow, so picky. And we were beside ourselves there for a while on how to get him to broaden out. And there were lots of strategies along the way. But one thing that I learned pretty early on was that he really liked Parmesan cheese and he really liked ketchup. And if I thought what I made would go better with Parmesan cheese, that plate would go in front of him with a bottle of Parmesan cheese for him to sprinkle on it. We still do that. It's like, okay, honey, I made this fabulous tortellini salad. You know, it was supposed to have feta on it, but I didn't put any cheese on it. You go to town with Parmesan because I know it'll go with Parmesan too. So you can go a long way on all kinds of things like that. And the only other thing that I would caution is that you kind of want to make them intrinsic. So, you know, if your kid loves goldfish crackers, and Sam loved goldfish crackers, don't ruin it for him. I remember his kindergarten teacher coming to me and saying, "Hey, I went to this class and I know Sam loves goldfish, but they were trying to get me to learn how to sort of encourage certain behaviors, and they wanted me to use his love of goldfish to do that." And I was thinking, like, okay, you're not going to, first of all, I was recognizing that there's no way she was going to get him to like stay in his chair for goldfish. That wasn't going to work. And eventually it was going to ruin goldfish. So, because it was going to be something that was delivered when he was struggling with something else. I don't know how I intrinsically understood that. Maybe that's something deep from my own childhood. But anyways, and she didn't want to do it. And she wanted permission for me not to do it. And I said, "Oh my gosh, you've got permission to just do your thing. Don't worry about this class that you obviously were not well taught at all." So, and when I think back on it, it was like, that was probably some of those early ABA coachings that they were trying to do with teachers and try to get this stuff distributed and out there and workable. And I'm sure it got ruined for a lot of kids because it was done by people who weren't as skillful as they needed to be and didn't have the good sense, like his kindergarten teacher did, to say, "I don't think I can deliver this the way it needs to be delivered." So every once in a while, I think we dodge some bullets.
Yeah, thankfully, right?
Yeah.
We have some earth angels that help us along our journeys for sure. Because I can think of every step of the way, somebody would pop in and I'd be like, oh my goodness,
Yes.
thank you,
Thank you.
angel.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And that is part of the reason why the last thing in the book was focused on loving, because it isn't just me or his dad or his grandparents or his brother and sister. It's everybody loving. Man, I just don't know what we would have done without some of those beautiful, loving people in his life. Holy cow.
yeah,
When he
yeah.
graduated high school, Bridget, I went to the local marketing promotion store and I got his graduation picture, and I had them do Team Sam, and I got 250 buttons, and I passed them out from kindergarten teachers on up. I think I have about 3 of them left. I mean, that's how intense it was. I want these people to know how much his graduation, they own it. They own it.
I just had the vision of a picture with you and Sam and your husband, and then have all those folks around him that really helped guide him. Because Joseph does talk about that how fortunate his journey was because he had so many people that were so good to him. He
Yes.
talk about, yes, of course, there was negative stuff too, but we have to talk about the positive. I mean, it's, when that outweighs the negative, then it's worth talking about as well. And not to forget that. Again, shift of lens. That's seems to be our theme today. But I want to know, like, if you were going to help a parent use your responsible responsive tool, this what's an example? How would you help a parent? How would you guide them use this?
Wow, you caught me at a really interesting moment because we do want to put together some kind of workbook.
Hmm.
I do remember as a young woman sometimes going into feminist bookstores and finding materials and figuring out, okay, I need to get some of these ideas out of my head. And how do I get these new ideas into my head? How did I make that happen? we have parenting traditions that are informed by generations of wisdom, but there are times I think where you've read something and now you've got to think about it in a way that makes that internalize for you. So I'm really struggling with this part of it.
Yeah.
Because to me, it's like, okay, well, if I want to internalize something, I'm going to sit down and write it. I'm going to think of a story, think of something that happened. Okay, I'm going to write down all the things that happened. Which of these things matter? Which of these things don't matter? What does this mean? What does that mean? That's how I'll work through something to internalize it, and it'll create a shift. But sometimes I know that doesn't always work for everybody. Everybody's a different kind of learner. I know sometimes with some folks, I was thinking about a girlfriend yesterday who was talking about how she had no intention of doing this thing and she was out riding her bike, and all of a sudden all of what she needed to do in order to do this thing just came to her. So it's like, okay, well, what was that about? You burned off a whole bunch of kinetic energy, got rid of whatever the fog was in your head, and then it all crystallized and came to you, and you overcame the fear of doing it first, but she had the information that she needed too in order to overcome that fear. So I have no idea, Brigitte, if I've answered your question, but if you read something and you want it to change your life, you have to decide to internalize it. And if you know how things get internalized for you, do that. So it might be writing, it might be talking with other girlfriends, it might be riding bike. So
Yeah. Self-determination is a big theme in your work. How can parents begin encouraging independence and agency in their autistic children starting from a young age?
yeah, that one's hard. Well, first of all, I think you have to create space. And
Mhm.
that can be hard. If you're in a restaurant and everyone's looking at you and your kid's having a temper tantrum, that's a really hard time to create space.
Mhm.
But it's possible. Maybe not there in the dining room. Maybe you got to go outside for a little bit, but you got to create space. And then once you create space, you can start making room for options. And even little kids, the classic thing is if you want them to dress properly, you put two things on the bed and say, pick one.
Yeah.
So that may or may not work. It depends on your child, but you have to sort of create space, then create options and let them start choosing. And you've got to seek feedback every once in a while, because I'm still stunned listening to my adult children talk about their childhoods and go, geez, I thought I was a better mom than that. I thought I was listening to you. I thought I was responding to you. Okay, thanks for that bit of humble pie. In terms of like having control over a situation, or thinking that the risk you're avoiding is really a risk you're avoiding. And then when they get older, that really becomes the driver of, okay, am I just anxious? Is the risk really there? If they were a neurotypical teenager, would I be wanting these kinds of limitations? So you have to sort of let go. You do. I mean, you have to let go. And you have to be willing to recognize that it might take you some really uncomfortable places in terms of anxiety and uncertainty. And if you've been letting out the rope a little bit all along the way, and when life forces you to let out the rope a whole bunch, I
Mhm.
mean, reinforce all the things that go right in those kinds of situations, because that's how your kids get resilient and how they find their agency and find their feet. And when they're like in high school, they should be coming to their IEP meetings. I mean, they need to know how to advocate for themselves. And you can start looking out in the community for similar kinds of situations, different groups that support agency, like the ARC, or that was a big one back when we were in Texas. There's a different group here in Modesto that I think is going to be the place where he gets support for his agency and himself. So, because I mean, agency does, I think, also require allies.
Yeah.
Even those of us who don't have a diagnosis, we manage to assemble all our allies in our village.
Mhm.
It has to be a little more intentional for our kids.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for that. If you have one piece, which this is going to be a hard question, one piece of advice you'd offer to moms raising kids on the spectrum, what would that be?
Trust yourself.
Mm,
That
I love
wasn't hard at
that.
all.
I love that.
Trust
Trust
yourself.
yourself.
Trust yourself. Yeah.
Yeah.
You got way more going on for you than you know.
Mm.
People have been trying to talk you out of trusting yourself for a long time for all kinds of reasons that have nothing to do with who you actually are. Trust yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. Is there anything else you want to share before we go?
Oh, well, I probably should do the plug thing and tell you the website for the books.
Yes, let's get that.
Yeah, and it's also the gateway to my personal blog where I muse out loud once a month, once every couple of months about things, thinking things. I'm thinking about things. So it's betweennowandreams.com. That's for all the books. And then my blog is just my name, peggyhenkelwolf.com.
Yeah, that's great. And we will also, when we release this, we'll have your information there so people can find out where you are. They want to learn more about you and
Oh, thanks.
pick up some of these books. Are your books on Amazon?
They are the my first book is out of print, but it's still available as an ebook. The University of North Texas has been a dream of a publisher to work with. They don't let any of their titles die. It's very nice. And
Beautiful.
then between now and dreams, when the first printing ran out and the publisher wanted to go to just an ebook like my first publisher did, Shala and I had a long conversation and decided to bring it back to us. So we have a little company of our own. It's called Love and Science Publishing, and we repackaged the book as a paperback, hardback, ebook, and audiobook. So if you don't have a whole lot of money, and because I never did, the
Yeah.
ebook is still going to be your best deal. But if you need to have something at your bedside where you're thumbing through it, you can still get it as a paperback.
I love those options because, like we were talking about earlier, everybody learns differently. And so some of us love listening. The Audible is a great option, and some of us need to touch and feel and go back to it. And then, of course, the ebook is also nice because it is so cost effective for our moms, right?
Right. That's right. And you can dog ear things in a virtual way. So I've done that too with your highlights and that sort of thing, bookmarks and that sort of thing. Yeah.
It's been lovely. I've felt a lovely connection to you. You're such a great person, as well as mom. And so thank you for sharing your knowledge, your wisdom, helping anybody who's listening to this learn more about our journeys. And I mean, this is really going to help some people. So thank you,
Oh,
Peggy.
I hope so. And I appreciate you going to the trouble to put these kinds of resources together. I have flirted with the idea of podcast. I just don't think I'm ever going to get it together. I've looked in that room to see what that takes and what it requires. And so you are doing a tremendous service to our community by putting these sorts of things together. Thank you for doing that, Brigitte. Thank you.
Well, as I always say, it really is my honor. And I have to tell you, this podcast would not be without my son, Joseph. So I have to give Joseph the credit. I just show up.
Well, there's a lot to say to
Yeah,
be
I know.
said, but tell Joseph I say thank you. Please do.
Yeah, I will. Thank
Thank
you for
you.
being here.
Thanks.
If you enjoyed this episode of Mother's Guide through Autism Podcast, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Help us spread this knowledge, hope, and inspiration. We need your help to help others. So the more we can connect and spread our love, the more moms and parents and teachers and our communities that we can reach. I'm Bridget, and I'll see you in the next episode.